Hi, it's Maya here with another BooktubeSFF Babbles video. These topics were created by Paul from A Common Touch of Fancy, and they are a part of the BooktubeSFF Awards season, and I will link all the information in the description if you want to check it out. Now, this week's topic is overlooked fancy, and this is not underrated fancy as such, but overlooked fancy books that I think should gain more exposure on BookTube. And I think this is a great topic, and I'm really excited to see all the other people's videos because I'm sure that I will find something that I have never heard about. So let's start with an author that I've only recently discovered, and that is Ursula Vernon. I read her Nebula Award-winning short story Jackalope Wives, and I really liked it. And I also heard Otavio from the Galilean Library mention her and compare her works to Neil Gaiman, and I really liked her. She writes mostly for kids under the name Ursula Vernon, and she also does comics, but she has a pen name, T. Kingfisher, which she uses to write for adults, and she self-publishes most of her works as ebooks, and most of her T. Kingfisher stuff is retold fairy tales. The first book from her that I read and that I'd like to recommend is Toad Words and Other Stories by T. Kingfisher, and you can find this wherever you can buy ebooks. And this is a collection of short stories which are all fairy tale retellings. I really like the way that Ursula Vernon writes. There's just an atmosphere of its own in them. And I'm currently reading The Seventh Bride from her, and it's sort of a version of Bluebeard as far as I can gather. I'm about 50% through, and I'm really enjoying that one too. So my first recommendation is Toad Words and Other Stories by T. Kingfisher. Another author or book recommendation that I have is Caitlin R. Kiernan. She's a writer of mostly dark fantasy, and I have here again a short story collection, Alabaster by Caitlin R. Kiernan, and this is again the first thing that I read from her. These are short stories about a girl called Dancy Flammarion who battles demons because angels told her to. Caitlin R. Kiernan has a lot of different kinds of works. The works that she does nowadays are more psychological. Her earlier works used to be more gothic, and they had a really specific writing style that perhaps is not for everyone. I really did enjoy them. I have Threshold here, but I know that a lot of people don't jive with this writing style. But her newer books are mostly psychological stories with horror or fancy elements thrown in, and one of those is The Drowning Girl. It's about a woman with a mental illness and a drowning girl, and it's pretty hard to explain. But it's not told in chronological order, and you're not quite sure what happened even after you read the book, but you're welcome to make your own interpretations. I also have The Red Tree by Caitlin R. Kiernan, which I have not read yet, but I will start this as soon as I finish other books that I'm currently reading, and I'm really looking forward to reading this one. But if you want to check out sort of Southern Gothic short stories, I'd recommend Alabaster. Then I have an author that has been writing for such a long time, and that is Charles DeLint, and he is an author of over 70 novels for adults, young adults and kids. I think he's the most known for his Newford series of novels. They're not strictly a series, but they all take place in his own fictional North American city of Newford. Charles DeLint is one of the biggest names in modern fancy or contemporary fancy, or what was in the 90s called urban fancy, but nowadays urban fancy has pretty much taken on another meaning. But he writes contemporary fancy, meaning fancy taking place in the real world, so our world with magical beings. And his stories are quite mythical in feel. He incorporates a lot of folklore into his stories. Here I have Memory and Dream by him. This is a Newford novel, and I'm about exactly halfway through, and so far I'm really enjoying this. This is about an artist who is studying under a famous but abusive artist, and she learns how to bring her paintings to life, and nothing that good seems to come from it. It takes place in the 70s and in the 90s at the same time, so the now in this book is the 90s, and her artist remembers her days in the 70s in Newford's art school. Another book that I really enjoyed from Charles DeLint is Jack of Kinrovan. This might be the first one that I read from him. It is perhaps more on the young adult side of things. I think that the main characters were teenagers, and it has more of the fairy side of things. So it has the unseelie courts and the wild hound and things that are pretty widely used in fancy. But I remember I really liked that one. Charles DeLint is a bit of a hit and miss author for me, because there are other books of his that I didn't like when I read them. One of them was Forests of Memory. I didn't like that book at all, but I think he's worth checking out. And then I have a couple of middle grade books. First I have House Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones, and this is the book that the House Moving Castle Miyazaki film is based on. And I don't think a lot of people have read the book, but I read the book before seeing the film, and I really enjoyed this book. I like this one more than the film. It is quite different from the film. There are some elements of it that are the same, especially the characters of Sophie, Howl and Calcifer. The plot differs quite a lot. And this is a book that I reread every now and then. I always like to read this, my favorite scene being the one that was also in the movie of Howl taking a bath and accidentally dyeing his hair. Next I have a book from a couple of authors. They are Patricia C. Reed and Caroline Stevemer. This is Sorcery and Cecilia, or The Enchanted Chocolate Pot. And this is a young adult or middle grade book that takes place in the Regency era. So it's a fancy and manners book. It's a lot of fun. It's so charming. It's written in letter form, and the two authors wrote this by writing the letters to each other. So there are these two cousins who write letters to each other. One of them is Kate, and she's in town in London for the season, and her cousin Cecilia is back at home in Essex. And there are evil magicians and good magicians and some romance and enchanted chocolate pots, and it's just charming and witty, and I really like the way that it's written through these letters. Finally, I have a comic series that I mentioned a couple of times, and I've even done a separate video about this series, and that is the Courtney Crumrin series by Ted Nafee. Here I have the first and second volumes. This is Courtney Crumrin and the Night Things, and this is Courtney Crumrin and the Coven of Mystics, second volume. This series is in 6 books, and also there's a 7th one that is sort of a prequel and not part of the main narrative. And it tells of a young girl called Courtney who moves in with her parents to her great uncle's place and finds out that her uncle is a warlock and starts learning magic. And it has fairies and magic and this great duo of a young girl and her old uncle. And I really love their dynamic. I just really recommend it. It's a lot of fun. The first volume, this one, The Night Things, is not as good as the others. This is a collection of short stories of Courtney's adventures, and it reads a lot younger than the second and onwards from that. So things really pick up in volume 2, The Coven of Mystics, which is my favorite from the whole series, and it's a lot darker than the first one, for sure, as you can perhaps see from this creature here. So those were all the books that I came up with. It's funny because when I joined Booktube, I think I could have mentioned Robin Hobb in this video, but of course after last year everyone and the cat is reading Robin Hobb, which is great because she is awesome. But it was funny because I didn't know a lot of people who had read her books before that. I read them in my teens and now everyone is reading them and I think it's great. One book that I also could mention, people like Neil Gaiman and people talk about Terry Pratchett, but not a lot of people mention Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. It's about the apocalypse and the son of Satan, and an angel and a demon who try to prevent the apocalypse because they quite like spending time on Earth. Finally, that was everything that I have to recommend. I really am looking forward to your videos. I want to find out about some hidden gems that I missed from the past, or about some new books that I haven't even heard about that have perhaps been overlooked in the middle of bigger releases. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm gonna go browse around and look at your videos, and I'll see you later.